What's up, and welcome back to Opposites Attract Podcast. This is Sonja Ramirez, your girl, and I'm sitting next to
Miguel Ramirez.
What's up, everybody? How's your day?
How was your week?
How is your life?
Going.
We are super excited to have this gentleman with us today.
Yes, he has over 30 years of experience working with parents and children, helping them with their relationships. He's the author of Raising Lions, Joe Newman.
Hi, Joe Newman.
Hey, welcome, Joe.
Welcome to our podcast.
That's a blast. I'm glad to be here. You guys got a good rhythm there. I'm like, I don't know if I'm supposed to talk or dance, but I'm with you.
A little bit of both. All
right.
We'll be good to go. Hey, thank you so much for being on. Yeah.
Yes.
So the way that we actually met was we were talking about your book that we had just finished reading. What was it? We read it in January.
Yes, we are big fans.
Yes.
Big fans.
And then you actually sent us a message, and here we are today.
Yes.
Yeah.
So yeah.
No, we loved your podcast. My assistant's always sort of tracking down when we see a bump in sales. She's like, "Where'd that bump come from?" And she tracked you guys down, and she said, "Oh, you should listen to this podcast. It's lots of fun. They like your book." And
Nice.
after I listened to it, I was like, I got to send them an email. Maybe
Thank you.
That's
We
awesome.
appreciate it.
That means a lot. So, what we would like for you to briefly describe is, tell us a little bit about how your childhood inspired you to write Raising Lions.
Well, I guess, I was the kid you didn't want to have in class. If you were a teacher, my sympathy goes out to all those teachers who had to teach me. I apologize. Sorry about that. Mrs. Ross, I'm sorry. I thought you were cute when I sprayed you with the disappearing ink.
Ink?
The bottle said it was going to disappear in 60 seconds. It took 45. It was the longest 45 minutes of my life.
Man.
So that was me trying to tell you I liked you. They actually studied me at the National Institutes of Health when they were studying what hyperactivity, later they called it ADHD, is, because they thought, this guy's like an extreme example. So, I was just, school was not a self-esteem builder for me. It was a place where I learned about all the things that I was doing wrong all the time, and it was really hard to sort of control myself.
So it was a bit challenging for you.
You were a handful.
Yeah. My mom said it started early she said when I was like 2 or something, 3, 2.5, she would take me to the playground, and she said after like a couple of weeks, soon as the other moms saw her, they would just like scoop up their kids and out. They were gone. I'd have the playground to myself. Because I was always pushing people or grabbing things, and it wasn't because I was angry. I just couldn't control myself.
You're very active.
Yeah.
And so your mom, after she realized that there was something different about you, did she take you in to get diagnosed? Were there any kind of tests that were done?
Yeah. So, at the time, there were very few. No one knew what hyperactivity was or ADHD. It was 1969, and so
you were just a handful back then.
I was just a handful, right? I was just a problem kid or a bad kid, and it wasn't until the second grade that the teacher said, there's a thing called hyperactivity, and I think he might have it. You might want to go have that checked out. So, but the thing about diagnosing kids, it's always, to this day, it's been 50 years since that time, but to this day, they don't do a genetic or a biological test. They just look at behaviors.
Yeah.
And they get a wide view of, and they're like, okay, all of these behaviors fit this, but it's they're not testing for a chromosome. They're not testing for testing the chemical imbalance. They're just sort of looking at behaviors and going, okay, we call this ADHD. So it's a very, it's not as cut and dry as sort of getting a pair of glasses or something like that.
Yeah.
The diagnosis.
So Joe, when did so after, that how you grew up, when did the thought of wanting to work with kids that were kind of like you growing up, when did that come in?
Well, for me, that came in sort of my late 20s.
Okay.
And at that point, I actually went to college right out of high school, but I only lasted for 7 weeks. It wasn't holding my attention. The only thing that I was really good at was drinking, and I was already good at that before I got to college. So it's like, I don't need another master's. I already got the master's in drinking in high school. Why am I here? And then I worked all kinds of different jobs. I was a personal trainer. I was a court reporter. I waited tables. I was a cook. I picked oranges. I drove a tractor. I sold encyclopedias. I had a pressure washing business. I had a moving company. I was a teamster. Just kept going. I built furniture, so I was interested in a lot of things, but I also partied hard and maybe too hard. And I kind of woke up one day and thought, oh man, I need something to hold my attention, something that means something to me.
Maybe something challenging.
And
purposeful.
Yeah, it was purposeful, always challenging, but also purposeful.
Gotcha.
It's something that I cared about. And I'm a Buddhist. I've been practicing Buddhism for about 40 years, and I chanted for like 5 days, like a monk. I mean, like 5 hours every day, like just trying to kind of talk to the universe and say, hey, what am I supposed to do? I need something. I need something to do. I need like my own mission, my own
fulfillment. You're
Yes.
missing fulfillment.
Right. Yeah. And it was like this swirling kind of storm of thoughts kind of came together. And I realized that I had kind of worked off this chip on my shoulder about how I thought about myself that I'd left high school with. And I was changing and understanding myself as a good person, a smart person, a person of character. And I realized that there are thousands, maybe millions of kids having that same bad experience at school. And I thought, that's it. I got to go back to school. So literally that afternoon on that 5th day, I walked into a school and I just said, hey, I want to volunteer with the kids that are driving your teachers crazy. I had my own business, so I could volunteer 16 hours a week. I was like, I'll come here every afternoon,
Yeah.
That was how it started.
So to get in, you started volunteering, right?
Yeah.
And well,
Smart.
I mean, aside from the
Very smart.
parenting thing and everything else, just as far as like a work perspective, that's one thing that I think a lot of people miss is that when you want to start doing something, a lot of times you got to start for free.
Right.
Like, hey, I want to just be around and see if I can pick something up. You can't expect to like, hey, I want to do this, and you're going to show up to a place and start getting paid.
Right.
So,
Joe, were there any prescriptions involved when you realized that you had ADHD?
Or like back in your time, was that a common thing? Like, getting prescription?
No, I was on Ritalin. Ritalin was the primary thing I was on. I was on Dexa something.
Yes.
I was on a couple different things, but Ritalin was the thing I was on from Dexedrine. But I was on a couple different things over those years, and from the time I was like 6.5 to 14, and then and at 14 I took myself off the medications just because I kind of realized I could feel the side effects.
Yes.
That were interacting with puberty, basically, and the way it was making me feel changed, and I also had this feeling like I have to figure out how to wrangle the mind that I've got.
So you started looking within for answers.
Yeah, like how do I hold my attention myself? How do I develop my own ability to attend to things, to follow through, to master subjects, to read books,
Okay. Nice.
Very cool.
So what was that when you're trying to figure out like how it's kind of like you're almost wanting to take ownership of your own mind. Like instead of letting the medicine or something that you're taking help you cope or deal with the things that are going on, or you're maybe like the scatterbrain thing, like you're trying to take ownership and like, how can I do this without the outside, medicine or whatever. Now, what did you notice when you were trying to do that? Like the difficulties or things that helped you kind of stay focused when you were, losing that focus?
Well, it was a long process, to be honest. And I don't think I was particularly successful at focusing in those first 4 years. I did find, I knew the difference, and my parents were really good about talking to me openly about the medication and allowing me to choose, am I going to be it on the week? Am I going to take it on the weekends? Am I going to take it on the summer? So I was starting to learn the difference between how my mind was operating on those two different states. And there was a different kind of sort of creative joy in learning that I was experiencing without the medication. There was a sort of focused attention that I was experiencing on the medication. Mm-hmm. And, but I would lose one, and gain the other in either direction, depending on whether or not I was medicated. So I gradually, what I did is I found things that I liked to do that held my attention, and I focused on them. I like wandering through the woods, mm-hmm. Looking for plants that I can eat. I mean, that's weird, right? But I thought but that's
how
like,
you get a rash.
That was, I was like the first guy making my own show, The Survivor, right? Except I was only 15 or 16. But I'm like, I got the field guides from the library, and I'm walking around, I'm studying all these things, and I'm saying, can I eat it or will it kill me?
We could have seen you on the Discovery Channel or something.
Or I would build things, and I learned about measuring, and I learned about geometry because I was fascinated with power tools. I wanted to make things, and
nice.
I liked to work. And so my learning was really much more experiential, and that drove things forward until the point when I started to create broader discipline to read and study and write and that kind of thing.
Nice. So real quick, I had just a thought. So now that with your experience and everything that you've learned over the years, looking back at the younger you, do you think you actually needed the medication back then? Or could have there been like some of that? Because when we were reading your book, or I don't know if it was on the episode where we were kind of doing the summary, because we talked about your book throughout, a bunch of episodes. But there was one where I remember talking or mentioning to our listeners, like if you have kids that are on medication, like we're not doctors, obviously. Right. We're just saying, like, as a suggestion, just look into it. But if you have kids that are on medication for ADHD, ADD, or some kind of brain chemical altering drugs.
Or learning disorder.
Yeah, like check out this book, because there might be techniques that you could use instead of just giving them medicine.
Right.
So when you look back at yourself, at 14 or younger, when you were taking that medicine, do you think you actually needed it back then?
Yes and no, to be honest. This is like not a straightforward answer. So I'll give it my best, right? So I think that ADHD, it's not do you have it or do you not have it? It's not like COVID. You can't test yourself and go, oh, you got it. Oh, here it is. It's never cut and dry like that. It happens on a scale. You might have a little bit of distractibility in certain instances. You might have a little bit of impulsivity, or you might have a lot. And so if you imagine that on a scale of 1 to 10, how ADD are you? You're going to sit somewhere on there. Now, the thing that makes that complicated is typically you'd think, well, if you're a 7 or above, you should be medicated, right? Not necessarily. Two things are going to change that equation and move that 7 to another number. One is, are you in a school that doesn't allow you to move and put your hands on things and talk while you're learning? Okay. If you don't allow that, then your 7 is going to look like a 9.
Right.
Okay. If you're in a school that allows and encourages that 7 is going to look like a 5. Now you're still up there. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
On the other hand, the thing that I focus on with parents is the thing they can most control, which is behavior and motivation cause the development of that attention or the delay of that attention. So, for instance, you got an ADD boy. He's 4. He's really clever. He doesn't know how to, he's constantly pushing his boundaries in very creative ways. He pretends he's not able to do certain things he doesn't want to do. Well, the more he succeeds in that behavior to avoid doing the things that would actually develop the attention, the further his attention falls behind. The better you are as a parent to be able to hold that boundary so that you can motivate your child to do those things that are difficult. Now, again, that 7, are you going to move it to a 9 or are you going to move it to a 5? Well, that can be the difference between medication and whether it's necessary or not. So for me in public school, with the behavior I had, medication enabled me to survive school. I don't think I would have survived it without it. Now I'm trying to go back and offer other solutions that weren't there for my parents.
So what are some of those solutions?
Well, first of all, let's just talk on the level of not behavior. And then I'll go to behavior. Is we want to engage kids in as many things as possible that are going to broaden their ability and their attention. So turn that off.
No problem.
And so what does that mean? That means involve them in activities in the house, in doing sports, having them do difficult things that they have to master to repeat. Chores around the house, these develop attention. Okay. If you have a particular love and you like to, you like to paint, or you like to do pottery, or you like to cook, or you like to fix your car, bring your daughter out with you and get them involved and have them start in those basic skills. These things are missing from daily life. And we want to bring those things in as much as possible because they develop our prefrontal cortex, those repetitive tasks. Chores show the strongest correlation to lifelong success than almost anything else. It's love of mom and chores. Yeah. Those are the only 2 things that are solidly connected with lifelong success. Sorry, Miguel.
No, I was just thinking, you're saying about like having the kids around when we're doing different things. And that's something, we've talked about it here before that I think is important. Like today, I don't know if it's like we've said, like we're getting older and we're starting to realize that we're not the young kids anymore. And it's like, oh, these young kids don't know how to do anything. But when you look at it, it's like, hey, you should be able to change a tire. Right. Like I listened to this comedian, Adam Carolla. He said like back in the day, people used to at least make pretend, like if their car broke down on the side of the road, they would at least make pretend that they knew something. And they would open the hood and at least look and be like, oh, I don't know what's going on. But these days, it seems like they don't know much about anything. It's like, hey, you got to get some basic skills. And that's how you get them is by being around mom, being around dad when we're doing things.
Right. So Joe, do you feel, this is a question that just came to me, but do you feel that we should have, pay their kids, like give them an allowance to do their chores? Because I've heard that that's not something that you should do. We are a family. This is a team. Everybody pitches in. Yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
Different schools of thought on that one.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with a small amount of money. But whether you pay them or not, it's good for them to learn how to manage some money. Whether you pay them or not, I think that they should be doing chores. And certain things are just like, look, you do this because you live in the house. You want me to drive you to tennis practice? Well, before that's done, I need the room clean.
Yeah.
Because I don't like to look at it and then I'm going to end up doing it.
Right.
So you can do it now, you can do it in an hour, or you can go late to tennis practice, which bugs you, right?
Yeah.
Then finish the room. So that's not a big deal. I'm going to let you figure out when you do that in the next couple hours, but I'm letting you know straight up, no clean room, no ride. That's part of what goes on. So I think there's a back and forth that needs to happen. And this thing that like Adam Carolla is talking about, where we used to know these things, our kids used to know these things. This is intimately tied with behavior. Okay. Because yes, it's not simply, there's 2 reasons that we've changed. One is that we've become obsessed with grades and academics. Like that's the be all and end all for lifelong success. So we just focus on get the good grades in school, when actually chores and participation and are just as important. So we need to change that view a little bit. But the other thing is we've empowered our kids and our kids aren't afraid of us anymore.
So we need to change. We need to start
beating them.
No, that's it. All right, where are they at?
Joe Newman said.
But this is like we made like a monumental historic change in how we parent our children.
Exactly.
It's like now we have parents that get abused.
If we want to do that,
kids.
We can't expect that. We're not going to. We got to change something else. We're just going to like encourage them and support them and give them lots of power, but not discipline them.
Yes.
Okay. So look, our kids are not afraid of us. They're not going to be afraid of us. Yeah. Nothing you do from this point on is going to make them afraid. That cat is out of the bag. So
I could totally see that with our daughter. Like seriously, no joke.
It's like when you're a kid in school and you have that one kid that comes up to you and they go like they make that movement to like they're gonna hit you and you flinch. It's like like now you do that to your kids and they're like, get out of here, old man. No, you don't scare me.
Yes. Yes. So let's talk maybe about, some things on how to discipline. I mean, what we do is we make them work out, like serious workout. They're doing planks, they're doing squats, they're doing push-ups,
Well, it's a combination of that and
taking
also
away the things that they
consequences.
enjoy. Yeah.
Like if you don't clean up, then you also don't get to go to your friend's house.
Yeah. So we use your book, all the knowledge that we gained from your book, which we should share that.
Yeah.
On how are some things, how to would you discipline your child, or how did you discipline, your child when they did not want to clean their room or when they did not want to do their homework?
Let me give you a perfect example. So we have our daughter. There'll be times when she asks, like, can I go to...
she's 11.
She's 11. She wants to go to her friend's house. And her room is a disaster. And I'm like, hey, before you go to your friend's house, is your room clean? And she's like, no. And I think for most kids, they would just be like, okay, well, now I get it. I can go clean my room and then go to my friend's house. She'll just go lay down in the room.
Yeah, she's done.
And stay there all night instead of going to the friend's house. So sometimes the consequences is like, well, whatever, I'll just hang out in this mess.
And the thing of it is like, we tell her, so that doesn't motivate her. So it's like, I know you have to find the thing that motivates them in order to do the thing, right? So then I ended up, after he did that, I ended up going in there and I took her tablet and I said, hey, I'm going to take your tablet. We want you to go to your friends. We want you to have fun. I said, but before, that happens, we need you, to clean your room. And so I'm being very focused on when I'm talking to her. I don't want her to feel intimidated. I don't want to talk at her. I want to talk with her. So I have a very strong voice, I'm very loud, I guess you can say. And so I try to minimize that so she doesn't feel like I'm upset with her. I'm not upset with you. I'm taking your tablet away and you can have it back once you clean your room.
Once you take care of business.
Right. Yeah. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think that's good. I generally feel like, the part of the problem, and this is actually a question you wrote earlier. You wrote when you sent, here's some ideas for the podcast. And one of them was back, I don't want to always fight with my kids. I just want to enjoy them and enjoy their company. Yes. Something like that, right?
Yes.
And that's very common, Now, what I would say is that conflict is necessary. It's just necessary. There used to be conflict in the home that was brought in a natural way based on the economics of the situation. I need you out there helping me in the field. I need you to watch your baby brother while I'm at work. I need this. We only have certain things. So children participated in a different way. And as a matter of fact, if you look at sort of more, I don't know if the word's primitive, but societies that still live the way that most societies lived 10,000 years ago, you go to the rainforest, what you'll see is that 2.5-year-olds, 3-year-olds are participating in that community. Mm-hmm. And by the time they're 4 or 5, their ability to do that and to consider the people around them is like a decade ahead of kids in Los Angeles.
Wow. Yeah.
Okay. So I think there's a transactional aspect. And so to go back to your daughter, you could say, you just have to make her aware of the fact of like all the things you take for granted, we provide those things. Okay. The tablet, the internet connection, the ride to your friend's house, the clothes that you buy. And there's a give and take. It's nothing personal. It's not about judgment about you not being a good person or not considering other people, even. It's that you take these for granted, and why wouldn't you? Right. But the reality is, we need you to do certain things because our only job is to prepare you to be someone who can live well on their own in the world. Find a mate.
Yes. Yeah.
That's it.
Yes. And I told, like, the hardest job is being a parent. I mean, just a few days ago, I was bawling. Like, I was in tears, and I'm like, I do not like being a parent. And I said that because, no, seriously, it wasn't even funny. Like, I was so sad because I want to have fun with my daughter. Like, I don't want to be the one, I'm already getting emotional. I don't want to be the one always having to tell her, to clean your room, do your homework. Like, it's just, I feel horrible, and I want that close relationship with her, but I know that I can't be a friend. It's a parent first, the friend comes after, but it's very difficult.
Yeah.
I think what you just said, 95% of moms in America, maybe dads in America, would feel very similar, and they struggle with this. And I think part of this is that when we made this big transition in our parenting, we weren't aware of it. We didn't decide to make it, but we decided, let's stop spanking our kids. Let's stop let's stop terrorizing our kids or screaming at our kids or sending them to bed without dinner because, they raised their voice to us or whatever it was. When we stopped doing that and we started shifting into this communication model, is that we needed other motivators. And what it does is because kids used to care about what we said to them. They took us seriously,
right,
because these things had weight. We were like angry bears, or we just would assert ourselves strongly, and things were serious. So now that that's shifted, and we're just trying to do communication, we need to introduce a whole nother level. Now, once you learn how to introduce that level, which is just you're making the causes and effects to prepare them for the world. So they're going to make choices. You need to give them effects for those choices. You want to do that in as humane a way as possible, a way that helps them to take responsibility and feel proactive in the world and to think about problems in terms of how can I solve this? Where is my power here? This sort of thing. So, but I think that, for me, one of the reasons I love my work, I've always loved my work. I love working with the kids that nobody else loves working with. I like those kids. I like a fight.
Yeah.
I don't like a fight. No.
I'm tired of fighting.
I'm tired.
So
it's
tired
exhausting. I have no energy left.
I was a wrestler in high school. I loved wrestling. I was a good wrestler.
Yeah.
I wrestled against a lot of very good wrestlers. My team were state champions. I got my kicked all the time for the first couple of years. And then I did a little of my own kicking and I enjoyed it, but I enjoyed it and all of it. I just like the battle.
So are you telling us, because my husband's in jujitsu, so are you telling us that we should choke our kids out? No.
No, see, but there's an engagement, you don't need to get physical with your kids. You don't need to spank your kids because one of the analogies is if you think about what you're in sometimes, it's like you're in a trade war and you're the US and they're El Salvador.
Yeah.
I love El Salvador, but in a trade war, they're going to get their ass kicked. Yeah. That's just how that works.
Yeah.
With the U.S. because you have all the resources. Do you need to use nukes? Do you need to send in the army? No, you don't need to do any of that hard stuff. Okay. You could be sweet as pie because you got all the resources. So be nice about it.
Yeah.
Okay. That's the position you're in.
Well,
they want to play.
I think, just your demeanor, when we listen, because we've listened to you, and for everybody listening, make sure you check out the YouTube channel Raising Lions, because there's a bunch of interviews and different scenarios and techniques that you can use on there. It's a great resource. But just the way you come across, I mean,
he's very cool and calm and collected.
There is no it's very a stable.
Yes.
you're not going up, coming down. It's a very mellow, kind of personality. So it's kind of when you come across, it's not like if you ask a question, it doesn't come across as asking a question and judging at the same time. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because sometimes when it's like, well, did you do that? How come you did? Instead, like if you were to ask, it's like, well, why? It's kind of like to get them to think as opposed to judging them.
Right. Yes.
Yeah. And I think, if we can be more curious with our kids and less judgmental, that's a huge step, right? Because, when a kid lies to you, let's be curious about that. That's an interesting choice. And, I got a consequence it, of course, but, it's not that I don't respect it or I'm not curious about why you did it. I'm sure you had a good reason. You're not just doing it because you're evil or bad, right. Or you're doing it because you thought it might work, or maybe you thought it was interesting, or maybe you thought it was
you were just scared of your parents. Like I talked to Audrey, when, I knew she had lied, and I talked to her and I asked her why. And she just felt because, I thought you guys would get mad at me, and I, thought I would, get in trouble. And so I realized that I don't want her to fear us. I don't want her to fear us. I want her to be able to come to us and talk to us about just all situations.
Well, this was more of a serious situation that she went through. And what we found was, we thought that over the years, like the relationship that we developed with our kids, that they would be comfortable and open and to come to us when they were going through something that was more serious.
Right.
And then we found out that she had talked to her friends, and, being friends with her friends and their parents and everything, we ended up finding out what was going on. But we were kind of disappointed that she hadn't came to us,
right?
To talk to us about what had happened.
So instead, I started looking at us, like our parenting. I started just doing some self-reflecting, because if she doesn't feel safe enough to come to us, then I felt like we were doing something wrong. What are your thoughts?
Well, it's not necessarily that you're doing something wrong, because there are times when kids just want their own autonomous life. And so and I think we can respect and not judge that too. Now, because I was thinking about, you're raising a 11-year-old, she's going into her teens.
Yes.
Look, 11-year-olds are supposed to lie to you. Okay. Now, it doesn't mean that you don't consequence it. Matter of fact, you could have a conversation with your kids, in their teens and say, look, you're supposed to break the rules. You're supposed to challenge the things. And I'm supposed to write the tickets. Okay. I'm supposed to slow you down. I'm supposed to set some boundaries to make those choices a little more thoughtful, because I'm in that equation. Now, are we always going to get along? No, we're not supposed to always get along. Are you going to like my consequences? You're not. Do I resent you for it? I don't. Okay. I respect the fact that you're going to be mad with me, and you might be a little sassy for next day because, I gave you a consequence for lying to me, and you don't like what the consequence is. But I'm still going to do that. Okay. That's my job. We're actually not supposed to like each other all the time. If I try to do that, I won't prepare you for the world.
Right.
When you're 25, when you're 30, when you're a mom, you look back and wish that you didn't like me so much, or I didn't need you to like me so much. Okay, it's okay. I love you. You're holding a space, for them to have feelings and go through things. Yeah, even if those feelings are they don't like you. Now, are they allowed to call you names or be disrespectful? No, you're going to consequence that. Like how you feel. Elise Lowen, who I love, she used to be with Goop, and now she's doing her own thing. But she and I talked, and she said, "What's the difference between aggression and anger?" Right? And so I said, "Well, anger is a feeling. I don't have any problem if my kids are angry with me. Aggression's an action.
Yeah,
that's going to get a consequence." Do I want you to control how you feel? Not necessarily. That's really your business, and I want to stay out of that. But what you do with those feelings and how you play that out to me, that's another thing, or to your sister,
Yeah.
Right.
You know,
Hey, when it comes to behaviors, what role does anger play? Because I get a lot of shit about being angry, and so does my son. And just like in today's society, right? Like, it's not okay. Like, anger is looked at as like a negative emotion. And just kind of thinking about it, like, I mean, these emotions, these feelings that we've had, the love and community, like all these things, I'm sure that's what kind of helped us survive, you know, throughout the years, throughout the history.
yeah.
I'm sure anger has some benefit, you know, like that emotion. There has to be some kind of benefit to that emotion. It can't be all bad.
Well, yeah, when a bear comes at you, you need that.
Look, I don't think I would have had the success I've had with the kids that I've had if I didn't have a lot of anger. I have a lot of anger. You know, I've had, you know, I'm pissed off that most of my early years, I was meant to feel like a loser because I couldn't sit still. Okay. And then when I had to get out in the world and realize not sitting still and moving around helps me to learn an enormous amount of things. Okay. I'm good at all kinds of stuff that school never taught me, you know, that people didn't appreciate in those years. I was medicated. I was taught to think of myself as disordered. That was something I internalized. It pisses me off. You know, talking about a prejudice that you carry for the rest of your life. If somebody says to you, you know, look, the way your mind works is broken, okay? And they tell that to you year after year from the time you're 6 to the time you're, you know, 18, you carry that with you for life. And then I had to realize that's not true. I am not broken. So does that piss me off? Yes, it's always pissed me off. But there's a lot of anger in me.
Right. How do you deal with that though? Do you lash out? Do you, you know, are you temperamental? I mean, how did you handle your you know, your anger inside?
Yeah. So what I try to do with children is what I had to do for myself, which is you have to learn how to use that anger to serve you and not to defeat you. Because that anger can defeat you and people can capitalize on it who, you know, who want to. And, you know, it'll stop you from getting jobs. It'll stop you from finishing important work. It'll keep you from relationships. So you have to be able to bring wisdom to your anger. Once you have that, you know, you can do enormous things. But you have to bring wisdom to that, and you have to bring self-discipline.
Yeah.
Anger without self-discipline, you're gonna lose. So it's okay if they're angry, but I need some self-discipline and some self-control. I had to teach that to myself, and I suffered the consequences of my own dysregulation for, you know, until into my 30s, you know, in a lot of different ways. And but the anger is tied to that ferocity in which I'm not going to give up when I go head to head.
Yeah.
You know, I remember I went to this school. I used to go to the school all the time where kids were thrown out of other schools. There were sort of kids who were wannabe gangbangers, this sort of thing. And this new kid comes in. I think he's 14 and he thinks he's, you know, the big OG. And so he starts mouthing off at the teacher, and they send him to me in the crisis room, and he starts mouthing off at me, and I'm like, look, you're not going to leave the room until I get what I want out of you, and so you can talk all the you want, and I'm gonna and 2:30 comes along, and all the buses roll up, and he lives like an hour away, and the principal sticks his head in and says, hey, it's 2:30, man, you got to let this guy go. And I said, I'm not letting him go.
Yeah.
And he says, well, you know, but the buses are going to leave. I'm like, let the buses leave. I'll figure it out. We stayed there till 5:30. I just waited. At one point, he was like, this is a crazy mofo. I'll give him exactly what he wants. He's going to be here all night. My father's going to kill me. And his dad had to drive across town to pick him up after a long day at work, was not happy about it. I'm sure he got an earful on the way home.
Yeah.
But the next day, that guy knew, oh, this guy's crazier than I am.
It's that meet the hand, the power balance that you talk about in your book.
You know, it wasn't physical, it wasn't angry, but anger's in there. There's an aggression. Aggression's important. Aggression, when your child gives you aggression, you've got to meet it with aggression. Aggression modeled with self-control, with some respect.
Okay.
You don't need to
Okay.
abandon your respect for each other because you have some aggression.
Yeah.
Two wrestlers shake hands beforehand and hopefully shake hands at the end.
Right.
Beginning of a fight, end of a fight. They respect each other.
Yeah.
Great athletes do that.
Like our little one, he's very, you can call him like a little perfectionist. Like he wants to know things now. And when he doesn't get it, he gets very angry and impatient with himself. And if, say we're doing homework and he makes a mistake, he answers a question wrong, he tends to hit himself. Like he'll hit himself.
Yeah. And it could be the first time that he's doing it too. It could be the very first time. But I think it's sometimes things that he in his mind for some reason will expect to be good at it already, because he's like, well, this is something that I should be able to do, even though I haven't done it before. Like an example was my wife and my son were playing this game, and they were playing 2 games upstairs. And one game, it was kind of like throwing these little magnets. And I think he kind of noticed that if he's throwing this magnet, like the polarity or whatever, like they could just kind of bounce off in whatever way they go. So there really isn't like a skill to this game. It's just luck. So I'm just throwing the magnet. So when he was losing that game, it wasn't a big deal.
No, yeah, he's like, good job, Mom. Like
yeah.
Oh, interesting.
But then they started playing a game where it was a little bit more straightforward.
Marbles.
Yeah,
we
it was
playing
marbles. And now he can aim, and now there is no magnets or whatever throwing your little balls off. So if you miss, it's because you missed. It's because you didn't make a good shot. So then he started getting, I don't know, I think that's what he was
getting
thinking.
upset.
And then he started getting angry.
And I started talking to my husband, and I'm like, this is so crazy. I'm like, with the first game, he was okay, and he was cheering me on, and he was like, good job, Mom. And then we started playing marbles, and all of a sudden, when he wouldn't make it into the hole, like he was throwing a fit. And we were trying to figure it out. And my husband's like, I think it's because the first game he doesn't have control of where the magnet goes, so he's not, and with the other one he knows that it's him, if he wins or if he loses, it's because he didn't aim correctly. Any thoughts? Like,
well, is this a general trend that does he not like to lose
exactly
yeah,
yes, he does
general.
not.
Okay,
he's very hard on himself.
Yeah. And I think another one of the questions you sent was about like importance of sports, participation trophies. And what I would tie that into is that losing is very important. We think winning is the way that you develop confidence. That's not true. Michael Jordan, right? Michael Jordan played basketball every day after school with his dad from the time he was 14 to the time he was, I think, 15. No, not 14 to 15. I think like 7 to 15. I think and I'm sure somebody will correct me on that, but basically he lost every time he played until he was 14.
That's right. Yeah.
He lost every single time. Now, if the idea that you need to win to build self-esteem is true, you wouldn't have a Michael Jordan. He'd be in the gutter with a bag, with gin in it, but he's not.
Yeah.
Because he's comfortable learning. And so this is something I think that we need to bring back. Is it children need to experience doing things they're not good at and losing from a young age. I spent like 4 years seeing a boy every Sunday who was very aggressive, hated losing initially. When I started seeing him, he was 3 or 4. But we ended up spending a lot of time where we would play. But I don't want to play action figures all day long, or for 3 hours even. So I'd be like, look, I want to, if he was, you want to play action figures, I say, I want to do something else first. So let's do my game and then I'll play your game. But I don't want to play your game. Well, then I'm not going to play your game. And I'd wait. So we started building in these things where we were doing things that he had to learn, that he didn't know, that he was going to lose at. I taught him to play poker. He was a pretty decent poker player by the time he was 5.
That sounds like a fun kid.
By the time he was 5?
It is a fun. By the time he was 5, he's
not a gambler now, is he?
He's a very smart, very curious boy.
Yes.
But he would lose. If we would play Go Fish, I would play serious and I would want to beat him. and then, and he would, and it was through losing he would win certain games, and we'd play games where there was more chance involved that he liked to play because he knew he could beat me, or he at least had an even shot. And then there were games I was like, I picked the game. He knew it was going to be a game I was probably going to beat him. We played chess, I think he finally beat me at chess when he was like 7. I'm not a great chess player, but I should be able to beat a 7-year-old. But anyway, he beat me I beat him for a couple of years. But the thing that developed is a relaxed ability to lose and to learn. Got to the point where after like a chess game or after a go fish game, I'd say, you know why I keep winning go fish? And he'd say, why? I said, because I'm happy to teach you if you want to know. I want to know. Now he's listening. Now he's learning. Now he's asking.
That's good.
You're the go fish master. And I said, well, when I see that you have a card and you play it or you ask for it, and you ask your mom for that card, and I had it, I push it up in my hand so I can always remember it, so I don't have to remember in my head.
Gotcha.
And that way, my memory's in my hand. And I taught him how to do it.
Yeah.
So he's playing the same thing. Same with chess. It's like, how do we control the center of the board? I keep controlling the center of the board. You want to beat me? You got to control these.
Get your pieces squares out there. Yep.
And so this creates a natural hierarchy.
Yeah.
People like that word, but I think you need a natural hierarchy. You need to recognize who's better than you, or else you're not going to learn anything.
Yeah. You know what? I have a question that kind of ties into all this, like the self-esteem. But before we get into that, if anybody that's out there listening right now, if you guys want to go and pick up Joe's book, Raising Lions, you guys can pick it up on Amazon. Is there anywhere else where they can pick it up, Joe?
No, Amazon's great.
Amazon's good?
That's the best way to get it. And then you can go to raisinglions.com. If you need to get in contact with me or you want to get other resources, and there'll be another book coming out later this year, but I can't talk about it yet because we're still working.
Okay, awesome. Well, we'll make sure that we keep an eye out. But yeah, if you guys want to pick up Joe's book, make sure you go to Amazon. If you guys want to go through our link, you can go to oppositesattractpodcast.com. You can watch our show there. You can listen to it there. You can follow all of our social media there. And if you click on the support the show tab at the top on the computer, or if you hit the menu button on your phone, it'll take you to our Amazon link, and anything that you purchase through there doesn't cost you anything more, but it helps out the show. You also see a link to Trust Inc. And Trust Inc. is?
We are a nationwide mobile notary agency. We do a lot of work for title companies, real estate agents, loan officers. If you are looking to refinance, purchase, or sell, please request Trust Inc. as your mobile notary and signing agency.
And you can go to Trust Inc. directly by going to trustinkusa.com. We're also affiliates with Libsyn, which is who hosts our podcast. If you guys want to start a podcast and you have a hobby that you want to talk about, if you want to give it a shot for free, you can use promo code OAP for Opposites Attract Podcast. Go to Libsyn, and that'll give you the rest of whatever month you sign up in for free and the next month for free. So this is a perfect time to do it because we're in the beginning of March.
Yes.
You'll get March and April for free if you sign up using promo code OAP. So, yeah. Now, the self-esteem, you're talking about the sports and the participation trophies, and it seemed like back in the day, like parents were so much harder on their kids, and it seems like the self-esteem today is like a big thing. Like their kids can't do any wrong. A kid could like literally actually like suck at something, and their parents will be like, you are, I mean, you're better than the professional players, out there.
Right.
You know what I mean? And it's like, I don't know if that's good. Like we have, when our kids do something, and they do it well, we make sure that we let them know, like, hey, that was a great job that you did right there. That's exactly what we've been working on. That's what you're supposed to do. And there's some things that you need to work on, but it's not just like everything is perfect and you're the best to ever do it. What do you think about the whole self-esteem movement? Because it seems like sometimes when kids have a lower self-esteem,
they work harder.
It seems like I'm not that good. Kind of like that Michael Jordan thing. Like if you spend time losing and you realize I'm really not that good, then it gives you that fire to, I need to get better. I need to get better. There's always somebody better. So I need to keep working. What do you think about that self-esteem?
Look, so number one is, I think praise has become this weird tool that people are trying to use basically to manipulate your children. It's like, I want you to try harder, so I'm going to tell you you're good at it. I want you to do this. and it's so when we're trying to manipulate a feeling and generate, it's not sincere. The kids know it's not sincere, and it actually doesn't produce the effect you think it's going to produce. Now, if you're going to do praise, I would just say everyone's going to praise each other at some point. You praise the people you love. You praise your friends, but if you started doing that just to sort of build their confidence, I think they'd get annoyed with you. I mean, I would be annoyed.
Yeah.
It's like really, it just feels like you're not being sincere with me. Now, on the other hand, so I say first, let's try and be authentic with our kids. Let's try and be honest. Now, you don't need to be mean or brutal when they've done something wrong, but you can be honest, and you can be, and you can ask them, do you think you put your best effort in that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Really, what do you think? And let them reflect on making that change.
Ask questions.
So, and they show that, and there's all kinds of studies to show this, that if you praise a child's ability, that child will become risk averse and less likely to try new things. If you praise their effort, they will try harder and harder things.
Yeah.
So that's
a big difference.
I remember, like in my junior year of wrestling, I went up a couple of weight classes because there was an opening in a very tough lineup for me to get in and wrestle varsity. And my first match, I go out there and my coach says, "All right, the guy you're wrestling, he's got about 25 pounds on you. He's a regional champion. You're not going to win." He says, "But if you make it all 3 periods and don't get pinned, you will be in a small group of people, because most people will never make it 3 rounds with this guy. Make it 3 rounds, make it 3 periods." And I went out there and I fought. I think he beat me like 28-8, which is a crazy score for wrestling. But I didn't get pinned.
Yeah.
And I came off. I was about as proud as I ever saw him. And I lost 28-8. The next year I did very well, but he would focus on your effort.
Yeah.
And that was incredibly motivating, and it got you to push yourself harder and harder. So I think with our kids, we want to do the same thing. It's like making an effort. And when they don't make the effort, ask them, how do you feel about that? What's your feeling about that? What are you walking away with? Were you good with it? You're good with it? Great. Let's not add our judgment to their failings, but we're not, let's not pretend there's something else either.
Right.
And I'm guessing that after the match that went 28-8, you could hold your head up high knowing that you didn't give up. I mean, you didn't win, but you did well.
Right.
Right. I mean, as far as your capabilities and what you're able to do, you did really well. And afterwards, was there like hey, I saw these things and maybe we could work on this for next time?
I was at the time, I was working on, I would stay late in practice to work on this whole different set of techniques that would give me an advantage when I mastered them. And it took me years, it wasn't until my senior year that my coach said, "Oh, go ahead and you can let that loose, like release the Kraken."
Yeah.
So, and at that point, when I'd mastered those set of skills, I was a pretty solid wrestler. So, but it took work. And but I think all of those experiences of losing and just fighting and losing and fighting and losing and fighting and losing because there were a lot of good wrestlers older than me, I think those were helpful.
Yeah. So Joe, what I would like to give our listeners are some examples, because I know in the book you talk about this break system, like giving the kids a break. And today a lot of parents are, when a kid does something wrong, there's a whole lot of talking. Like, if it's like, "Hey, I need you to clean your room," it's like, "Hey, I need you to clean your room." And you ask them like 5 or 6 times and there's no discipline from the parent. There's no action. So then the kids figure, well, hey, if I'm not getting disciplined, if I'm not getting punished, I'm not going to do anything about it. Can we give some examples, or give our listeners some steps to take when taking control of, parenting?
Yeah. So I think to start off, think about your kids as they're scientists. Scientists are collecting data about what happens when you do certain things. Okay, so we run the trial. What happened? Mark it down. Run the trial. What happened? Mark it down. Run the trial. Mark it down. Eventually, we get a bunch of data, and they make a decision about what's true and what's not true. So, parents, say to me, "My boy doesn't know that no means no." Okay, and I said, "Well, let's look at what's happening in the house." And their 5-year-old throws a toy across the room, and mom says, "Hey, don't throw your toys." And then they throw the toy again. And then she says, "Hey, I told you don't throw the toys." And throws it again, and she's tired, so she ignores it. And then throws the toy. Says, "If you throw that toy, you're going to break it. If you break it, I'm not going to buy you a new one." And this goes on with information, and then pleading and explanation, and, "Hey, don't you respect my feelings?" And it gets more and more charged. And then at about the 15th time, they go, "That's it. No TV tonight." Okay, I've had it. So what's the researcher? What's the little scientist learned? He learned that 14 out of 15 times, nothing happens. Nothing happens. Okay, and what they're actually going to learn is they're going to learn that actually at around time 8 or between 8 and 13, my mom starts to get this tone in her voice, and she's about to snap. And when I hear that tone, I'm going to back it off a little bit.
And that's what's going to drive you insane.
Yes.
That's what's going to drive you insane, because you keep getting to that point of snapping and you never snap, and then you get to that point and you never snap. Yeah.
Right. Or I'm going to give her that cute little smile that always makes her super happy. Joey. And I'm going to say, "I love you, Mom." And, and I'm going to do that little charm thing. And then I'm going to go back to doing whatever I want, because there's a scientist in there who's making these sort of decisions.
They're experimenting.
So they're experimenting on you.
Right.
Right. So, but we talk to them as if they're preachers. Like, we give them some moral philosophy about what right and wrong is. Like, that's going to make up their mind about what they're doing. But they could care less about your moral philosophy. They really could. But, that was a different equation when your kids were afraid of you and they wanted your approval.
Right.
Okay? When they wanted your approval, they would go, "Oh, she says that's good and bad. I got to do what she says." When they don't want your approval anymore, when they're more interested in power, when they're more of a scientist, you just throw that out the window, because it's useless. They don't care about that explanation. So you have to set consequences in ways that are small and immediate. So how do you do that? Simple one is, "Hey, I need you to take a break for a minute. You can just move 3 feet away from where you are. Sit quietly. There's nothing to do during the break, but you sit for a minute." And then if they say they're not going to do it, say, "Look, I'll give you a moment to think about it. Then I got to count to 5. If you're not sitting there, then you're going to get a longer break." Maybe it's at the 3-minute. Now, they do the 3-minute break. They won't do the 3. They have a bigger tantrum. You go 1 minute, 3 minute. You say, "Look, you got your show coming up, and right now you're not taking the long break. So I'm going to start a timer, and however long it takes, that's how much later you're going to start your show, and you're going to miss that first part." And they say, "No, don't take away my show." I said, "I'm not taking away your show. I'm just telling you there's a timer running. How much? I don't know. That's your choice. Figure it out." So you're giving them autonomy. You're not giving them judgment, but you're giving them a firm thing that they have to navigate.
Right.
Okay. A scientist starts to see that, and they go, "Oh, this is a road. There's exit 1 that gets me to where I want to go in a minute. There's exit 2 that gets me there in 3 minutes. And there's the one here, which gets me there in 5 minutes. Plus, I lose something that I care about."
Right.
Yeah.
So you pair that scientist thing with give them a sense of autonomy and respect, which is what they want, and they feel satisfied. Now they can make a decision that's in everybody's best interest.
Yeah. And I love the fact how you mentioned in the book, like, not to show any emotion. It's not get over there and take a break. It's very, just your normal tone. Yes.
This happens.
Yes. And then you stated that you don't allow them to take a break if they're crying or throwing a fit. Their 3 minutes will start once they calm down, right?
Yeah.
So that's really, really great as well.
So if they get over there, like what happens is kids will start to try and because you don't know how much of that is an attempt to manipulate you. Like I went to a house once where, the boy was, they're like, my son will take a break, but we hate to give him. Why do you hate to give him? Because he just screams and kicks and lays there making a fuss for the whole time. So they would just give him a 5-minute break. He would literally like scream and yell in the place that they told him for 5 minutes. And then when it was over, he'd come back and do his thing. And so they were like, oh, we just can't take all that screaming. So we don't like to give the breaks. And I'm like, well, let's just tell him the break doesn't start till he's quiet, and all of a sudden the equation changed. And so in the language, even there, you don't want it to be judging. You say, look, if you need to cry, you got a 3 or 4-year-old, they might be upset.
Right.
If you need to cry, it's okay.
That's right.
Crying's fine. You cry. And when you're finished, we'll start your break.
Yeah.
But if you need to cry, I respect that. As long as you don't get out of the seat, you can cry as long as you want, and the break won't get longer.
Right.
So, and we could talk about it after.
Yeah. See, and that's great.
About it after.
Because I didn't realize, my son would get really, really upset. And I'm like, Joey, go in your room. Like, go in your room and, think about what you did. And I didn't realize that doing that was harmful, because it's like you send him away, making him feel that his feelings aren't validated. And he never gets to learn how to control his emotions.
Or work through it, yeah.
And we isolate him versus, hey, baby, what's going on? Let's talk about this kind of,
Yeah, and I think what you're recognizing is that there's, like in my book, Raising Lions, it was written 10 years ago. I used the term timeout. Now, if you listen to the way I talk about it, I don't use the term anymore. I use the term break. Now, part of the reason I changed that is that what you just described is what most people associate with a timeout. It's telling them about their behavior. It might be adding a judgment. It might be isolating them in the room. All those things are like the opposite of what I'm telling people to do. So I realized I was doing a very particular kind of timeout, and I should call it something different because people are going to get confused.
Gotcha.
Because I don't want to tell them about the behavior. Okay, I don't want to add an emotional charge, and I don't want to isolate them. So because it's much more effective
if they recognize themselves. Like if they you get them to speak and get them to tell you why they're going on a break. Right? It's connecting the dots, but allowing them to think and understand that, okay, well, I'm having to take a break because I did, A, B, and C.
No.
Right?
Yeah. See, what you just pointed out is something that we realized when they did a study using my method, or what happened when a school adopted my method for their whole classroom management strategies. So this was up in Santa Barbara. University of California, Santa Barbara, studied a school over the course of a year. And what they did is they went in and they measured off-task and problem behaviors and how teachers responded to that for like 3 weeks, 800 observations before I came. Then I came in, I did this afternoon seminar, and then during the next week, I coached teachers who were having difficult classrooms to use it. And then I did a follow-up afternoon seminar. And then they came in after that and they measured the results, the change, and then they measured them again 3 months afterwards. So what I taught the teachers to do was basically what I just described. In the classroom, I said, first of all, I don't want you to talk about behavior during the classroom. So it was not like, hey, Miguel, keep your hands to yourself. Miguel, I told you to sit down. Miguel, I don't like that tone you're using. Miguel, don't talk while I'm talking.
I'm getting flashbacks.
Yeah, you and me both. So instead, if you had your hands on somebody else's stuff, I'd say, hey, Miguel, I need you to take a break for a minute at the focus desk. Leave your stuff there. Okay.
Very calm, very collective.
Very calm. Nothing at that desk to do. Leave your work there. And he's like, no, I don't want to. I'm sorry. Or, say, look, no big deal. But if you don't take it, I have to count down. It becomes 5 minutes. And if you don't take that, you have to report to the office for 15 minutes. I'll let you figure out how it goes, but that's the pattern.
Yeah.
And you do this. You don't talk. You say, if I said, hey, Miguel, take a break at the focus desk. And you say, why? What did I do? I say, look, we can talk about it after class.
Yeah.
So they followed this pattern. Well, they saw a dramatic drop in off-task behavior. It was cut in half school-wide, okay, and that held throughout the year. But they found, and this relates, back to what you were saying, Sonja, which is that they found that the teachers who did less talking about behavior got the best results in the school. So the teachers who went, Miguel, take a break, got much better results than Miguel, keep your hands to yourself, take a break. That little addition of reminding you of what it was. And why? Because when you step in, you're doing the work that you want your child to do in their own mind.
Yes.
Yeah.
You want them
Gotcha.
It's kind of like what you did with the kids. It's them saying what they did wrong. It's like getting them to admit what they did.
Well, also you have some great examples in the book. There was one that I used recently where they were doing something, and I can't remember what it was, but it was like, well, look, right now, this is your consequence. Now, if I have to tell you what you did wrong, then we're adding to the consequence. But if you can tell me what you did wrong, then you have this smaller consequence.
Yes.
So what is it? And then they said, it's because of this, this, and this. Okay, so go pay your consequence now, and then we can move forward. So there's some great examples in the book about that.
So Joe, go ahead.
I will say, just as a regular tool, like I would say that 95% of the time I do breaks, I don't ask the kid what they did wrong. I say, are you done? Do you need to talk about it? And they say no, and they go on because they've solved the problem, and I'm going to respect that. I don't need them to confess in front of me. Some of those kids a lot of kids are going to find that humiliating or degrading. They're making their own correction, and you allow them to do that without kind of calling them out on the carpet. So that tool that I used, this was in the case of the bully in the book, the guy who was bullying all the kids on the playground, and I asked him, why I gave him the break. Occasionally I'm going to use that because it's a more serious problem. That bullying was a more serious problem. I needed him to be really clear about, hey, we understand each other, right? But in these small other instances, daily things, 99% of the time, we don't need to talk about it. I'm okay that they're fixing it. If they want to talk about it, I talk about it after.
Gotcha. Okay.
So the question that I wanted, are you okay?
Well, I wanted you to bring up the question that we had from our listener.
Okay. So we had a listener, we had two. One was talking about, self-confidence. His daughter had gained some weight, and she's feeling really bad about it, and she's really hard on herself. And he wanted to know what are some things that he could do to help her.
So I think that weight is a tough one, right? Because some people are going to have a hard time just taking that off.
Do you know how old she was?
I think she's 10. No,
okay.
She's 10 years old.
Yeah. But I would have a frank discussion that said, look, it's natural that you put on weight. And people go through are going to be different sizes. I don't have a problem with it. I think you're beautiful, you're my daughter, etc. Now, having said that, if you have a problem with it and you want my help addressing the problem, I will help you do that. Now, self-confidence is often tied with actions. Okay. So whereas if you just say to somebody, they can do it, but you don't set the boundaries for them to be able to discipline themselves to do it, you're actually going to lower the self-discipline. The self-confidence. Okay. Because what you end up doing is you create this vision of what they should be doing by your praise, but yet they know what they actually are capable of. And the distance between those two things is huge.
Yeah.
And that means you're not going to be confident, no matter how much somebody tells you you're great. You got to close the gap between those two things. So, for instance, you say, look, I will hold you to certain things, like we'll have healthy meals in the morning. We'll go for a walk in the afternoon, and we'll learn how to pack our own lunches together. I don't think my daughter I have a stepdaughter. When I moved in, she was a little chubby. She didn't like it. Every morning, she would not want to eat breakfast because she's getting dressed for school. She's 12 or 13. She wants to look cute and she doesn't like the way she looks, so she wouldn't eat anything.
Yeah.
Well, by lunchtime, she's starving and she's eating.
Then you eat everything.
Everything.
Yeah.
All your Doritos, your Doritos, whatever, and she'd come home famished. So there was a swinging emotional cycle, and gradually, it was a slow thing over the next 2 years where I taught her about eating, and we would look, you can't leave the house until you have something healthy to eat. Mm-hmm. You have to have a breakfast because otherwise you're not going to. And so we held discipline areas, and she really became, and I praised her about when she made great decisions, to be honest. When I saw them, I'm like, look, don't feel ashamed of the fact you ate 2 portions of that. That was 2 portions of a very healthy meal. I love that, So I would point it out when she was doing well, and I try and help her alleviate that shame. I don't know if that answers the question, but I think you can create some boundaries around it. You can hold those boundaries, say, look, but ask her, say, look, I'm not going to do this without your approval, but if you want my help with it, I will help you, and I will hold certain boundaries around it. If there are certain foods you don't want me to have in the house, we'll keep those out of the house.
Right.
Those when we go out once a week.
Mm-hmm. Or even another good thing is, getting them, maybe riding bikes together or becoming a little active.
Like Joe was saying, going for the walks, and not making them feel like they have to do it on their own. Like, you're the one that needs to get healthy, not me, because I'm skinny. It's like, well, we can all get
Let's do this
healthier,
together. Yes.
Yeah. And the benefits of being healthier too.
Yes.
And I think also, though, make sure that it's your son or your daughter's desire to lose that weight.
Right.
And not your desire for them to lose that weight, because then that can turn into judgment. Now, you might say, look, I need you to do a little exercise every day just because of your health. I'm concerned. I want you to exercise. So you got to pick something and be outside, do it. That's just part of your day, like a chore. Okay. But I would stay away from any sort of judgment about their weight. If they have a judgment about their weight, you can help to alleviate the shame on that and help them to develop, basically good disciplines. Exactly.
And the great thing is that we can also explain that if there's something, especially like weight, that's something that if they don't like it, they can change it.
Right.
So you don't have to be this way. We can work on that and get better. Right. We have another listener that sent in a question, and they said their youngest daughter has a speech delay, and they have her in preschool. She has an IEP. And do you have any recommendations on how to help and or parent, because she has a bit of a temper and lashes out and screams a lot and doesn't take playful teasing from her sister or her peers well, and they think it's because of the ability to communicate that she's struggling with, and they try to be patient and understand what she's saying, but she's not always responsive when they're trying to correct her. So sometimes she just shuts down and alienates herself.
And they said this is a preschooler?
Yeah, she's in preschool.
Yeah, so the first thing is, and this may or may not relate. I don't know enough about the situation, but I'm going to tell the story in case it does. So I had a family actually nearby, and they had I think 3.5, 4-year-old who was not speaking much. And she, when she wanted things, she would grunt, moan, and people would anticipate what she wanted, her family, and they would sort of help her with it. And they were thinking she might be on the autistic spectrum. She might have a speech delay. They were going to have her assessed. And so what we ended up doing is I taught them, I said, let's stop making accommodations for her not speaking. Ask her to speak when she wants the things that she wants. Ask her to do those in full sentences, and just integrate that into a regular part of the day. Because one of the things that we don't realize is when our kids start to show a problem, our first instinct to nurture them and to take care of them is to make an accommodation. Okay, but if your child recognizes that you're making all these accommodations, they're going to step out of doing the thing that's difficult. Okay, and they're going to let you take over that responsibility. Now that's going to slow down the development. It can slow down the speech. In the case of this girl, it was very interesting because it really was a matter of 3 3 or 4 months of them doing this, and her speech came back up into the normal range for kids her age when they'd been way out of it, because they realized they had facilitated and they were responding to grunts and pointing and all these things that she had kind of slowly trained them to do, and instead of speaking because it was difficult for her or whatever her difficulty was, it was keeping her from doing it, and then she was carrying that over into preschool. So first I would say, let's set some boundaries around that and say, hey, I need you to say it. I need you to tell me in this situation when you want this, when you want this. So get her in the practice of doing it on a regular basis. I think you need to test out those tantrums and the angers, the anger and the short temper that you're seeing, and you need to create some consequences and frustrations on that, because that sounds like it also might be a point where she's training you not to give her difficulties that she can't overcome, and you're trying to move those. So that's another example possibly of a passive tantrum.
Gotcha.
So passive tantrums are happening in every household with every kid to some degree, with some kids enormously. And that's they're feigning an inability. They're pretending not to understand or to hear you or to be able to control themselves. Yep. And you got to test that out through creating small bits of frustration around that choice to see if that behavior changes.
Yeah.
Yeah, these kids are very smart. Like they are very smart. And so it's just amazing. Really quick, what are some top parenting tips for families in order to raise happy children? What are some, parenting tips that you can give?
Read his book.
Read his book.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Read Raising Lions.
There you go. That's it.
Yes.
That's the top tip. Well, I will say that, it's important that you get your needs met. That as a parent, sometimes we think that we're supposed to abandon all of our needs and all the things that make us sane and relaxed and the things that give us pleasure, because now we're just the mom or now we're just the dad. And we need to mostly just be that when we're with our kids. But our kids need the example of an adult that takes care of themselves a little bit. Mm-hmm. So I had a family where, I had to ask the mom, I said, what do you do for yourself? What did you used to? She said, well, I used to run. I used to love to run. I'm like, why don't you run? Well, if I'm not here, then this happens and this happens. I'm like, I need you to start running. Okay.
Lead by example.
What else did you do? Yeah. What else did you do? I used to write science fiction. I loved writing science fiction. I was working on a book and I haven't done that in years. I'm like, I need you to carve out time every day to write your science fiction.
Gotcha.
And so putting these things in your day, finding, having your children be able to play by themselves while you read a book or while you exercise or, while you work in the garage or while you build something. If these are the things you love, you're their model for the kind of person they can become. And if you just give up all of your wants to just be something else, they can't relate to you. You're not creating a role model that they can actually emulate moving forward. So think about the things that you want in your life and start bringing that into the balance. That's mutual recognition. You can recognize your children. You can set your boundaries. You can ask them to do things. You can give the things they need and indulge those things that give them joy. But make sure there's a reciprocal give and take, and that takes part in that, because that's the vision they're going to follow into adulthood.
The mutual recognition. Yeah.
That's huge.
Yeah.
Well, we've already been at it for almost an hour and 20 minutes. Do you have anything before we get out of here?
Well,
because I have one last thing before we.
Okay. So, good cop, bad cop. Right? You always hear that. There's a good cop and a bad cop. How do you feel about that? I mean, do you feel that is the right way? Because a lot of times I feel like I'm the bad cop, but I've talked to Miguel about it and I'm like, hey, can you, take some of this off, because I'm just tired of being the one to, I'm tired of being the bad cop.
Right. Well, I mean, you never hear any complaints about the good cop, bad cop system from the good cop.
Yeah. Right.
Right. There's a reason you brought up the question, because it's no fun. right?
No, it's not.
I'm gonna suggest a better system, right? Which is whenever I write a protocol or a plan for a family, I include a section called choreography. Okay, what does that mean?
Oh, it's
That
a dance
means
that we're both in.
That's
Now
right.
everybody's
You're both doing it. That's right. So, and the way that so if you have a system of like these kind of thing, these things have to happen for your son. He has to do these things before these things happen. If he doesn't take the break, this thing happens. I want you to do those things interchangeably. So, Sonja, you give a break to your daughter. She won't take it. She storms off. You say, I'm going to start the time. You're going to lose some of the time from your iPad until you come back, and I need you to take a break. She runs over to Miguel. She says, Mom's being I can't stand it, And Miguel says, look, if your mom says that's the way it is, that's the way it is. The time's running. You let me know, but I can't stop that time. We can talk to your mom after, but you hold that boundary, or you give the first break, and then if you're pissed off and you can't talk to her anymore, you look over to Miguel and you tap your nose, and that's your signal for him to take over. You walk out of the room. Miguel goes,
Tag me in.
I'll take it from here. 5, 4, 3. You just tap. Exactly. It's tag team wrestling.
All right.
It all comes back to wrestling.
I think we'll be good at that.
I'm coming off the top ropes. They better watch out.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, but when one of you is upset and things are getting too hot, tap out.
We back each other up.
That's good.
And never question. Even there's gonna be times when you see something that the other one does that you don't agree with.
Yes.
Don't contradict it. Follow it through. You can always talk about it afterwards.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Follow through. When you're alone later, you can say, I don't know if that was the best choice. What do you think?
Yeah.
Okay.
So before we get out of here, the last thing that I wanted to ask. So when we're going through Raising Lions, and you've been doing these things for such a long time, the way we've been parenting for years, and then we read the book Raising Lions and we realize, like, all right, we need to start doing things a little bit differently.
Right.
And then it's tough. It can become frustrating, just the pushback, because the kids aren't used to it.
Right.
We're not used to it. And how long does that last? Because I'm guessing eventually the kids pick up on the new patterns. We start getting into a groove, and that's when the kind of like the magic starts happening.
Right,
but how long does that process take? Does that period take before? Because it's kind of like you go through a hard time and then it gets better. Is that right, or is it different?
Well, you're always going to go through a little bit of an adjustment. Your kids, when you change the system, your kids are going to push back. That's just going to happen. So the more that you expect that and you don't take it personally, the better. But I would like to frame it a little differently. It's not that you're waiting for your kids to come around. Your kids are waiting for you to come around.
Okay.
That's good.
So the sooner you can change your relationship with conflict, the sooner you can set that boundary early and, with small consequences, but with a lot of love and sort of respect and autonomy. Mm-hmm. And that's part of your tone. And you really are not taking it personally. The quicker you learn that, the reason I write a script that parents can repeat over and over again is that I'm trying to get them in the habit that then becomes natural and intuitive to have a different relationship that's more relaxed with conflict.
Gotcha.
So the more quickly you get to that point, the more quickly the process happens. Your kids are going to respond. If you have an angry tone for 6 months and you're just trying to do it in a punitive way, well, guess what? The program might be hell for a year.
Yeah. You know what? Now that you mentioned that, what that reminds me of is when I first started in Legal Shield and I started selling, like when you get a script, you're like, hi, my name is, do you have 15 minutes? There's something I would like. And you're just like reading from a paper.
You sound like a robot. Yeah.
Right.
But over time, you've done it so many times and you've talked to so many people. It's like, hey, how you doing? My name is Miguel. I'd like to, and it starts to come off more natural the more you practice it. So if you have a script, then you know what you're going to say. At first, it might be kind of clunky or whatever, but the more you do it, the better you're going to get at it. And it just starts to become natural.
Right. You're going to use certain things, just like, what is it? Karate Kid. Wax on.
Wax off.
Exactly. Yep.
Wax on. Wax off.
Perfect.
Yes. Paint down, paint down, paint down.
Paint the fence. That's right.
Eventually all those movements become natural and you go, oh, they make sense to me. When they feel like their autonomy's at stake, I say, hey man, I can't control you. You're going to make your own decisions. I respect that. And that's going to come naturally. Initially, you got to look at a script and figure out, until you make that your own.
Yeah.
Yes.
Gotcha. Well, Joe, thank you so much for being on the podcast. We really appreciate it.
This has been so helpful.
Yes. And where can people find you? What's the best way to get a hold of you for people to follow you?
You can go to Instagram. If you want to follow me on Instagram, it's at Raising Lions. Everything's at Raising Lions. YouTube is the Raising Lions channel. And you go to raisinglions.com, sign up for the newsletter there. You sign up for the newsletter, you'll get notices for Q&As that I do that are live and free. You can get, kind of previews of my next book, little chunks that I come out with, all sorts of sort of insider tips. And, you'll be the first to know. And then,
very cool.
Or you can schedule time with me on the website. Some people want one-on-one time, and I do consulting directly with parents and teachers all over the country.
Awesome.
Wow.
Excellent. So definitely make sure you guys check out Raising Lions everywhere. You guys can pick up the book on Amazon. You guys can go through the link on our website if you want to pick up the book, and it'll also help out the show. You got anything before we get out of here?
That's it. I'm just excited to continue this journey as being a parent and using, your techniques to grow the relationship and, just be better parents. So we thank you so much for taking time to join us today.
Yeah. There's a reason I wanted to be on your podcast. I think the two of you got a lot of heart, and I feel like, your kids are going to be good because you're thinking about it and you're thinking about your own, position in the world with them, and, you're ready to do the hard stuff. And I don't know. I love being on your podcast. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Joe.
I'm sure we'll have another in the future.
Yes, we definitely have to have you back on. So we appreciate it. Thank you, Joe. Thank you, everybody, for listening. And we'll talk to you guys next time. Bye.
Bye.